The United States has just found an additional $3 billion to send to Ukraine. They say that it was an accounting error that happened when they overestimated the value of aid being sent to Ukraine. The U.S. military has a big problem with accounting, and I'm going to lay this out for you, and it will blow your mind, because if you ran your personal finances this way, you would be in bankruptcy court every year. I know that's not possible because...
Right.
But you know what I mean. Now, here is National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan just this week being asked about this mysterious $3 billion that showed up on CNN. Watch.
The U.S. has at least $3 billion that it didn't know it had that it can use for Ukraine aid. That's a hell of an accounting error, and it provides a lot of fodder to critics of U.S. aid to Ukraine and critics who say there's not enough oversight going on. Are you concerned about this accounting error?
Well, one thing I just want to make clear, that is not money that went out the door and disappeared. That is not a waste of that $3 billion. It is simply a tally of how much military equipment we have given them. And the way that the Pentagon was counting it was, what's the replacement cost for the equipment we provide, rather than just the actual cost of that equipment. Once you make that adjustment, it turns out we have an additional $3 billion that we can spend to provide even more weapons to Ukraine. And at the end of the day, not one penny of U.S. dollars will have gone missing or have been misallocated. It will all be provided in the form of equipment to Ukraine on the battlefield.
Okay, now just a second. If they are saying we can only afford X amount, right, and each piece of equipment has a dollar value, what they're saying is we thought we sent X, but we actually sent Y, but we're all going to be okay. It doesn't work out that way. As we have later on, we have a whistleblower who was a Pentagon advisor saying what that means is you're sending Marines with guns without bullets, basically. Like, you're sending people out with in a more dangerous situation because they are not equipped, because we literally can't count. That's what they're saying. So this is what they're calling just an accounting error. Like, you know, they took the blue book value of the car versus the insurance value. Sabrina Singh, the spokesperson for the defense secretary, had this to say about it to Fox News, saying the department discovered inconsistencies in equipment valuation for Ukraine during an oversight process of presidential drawdown packages. In some cases, replacement cost rather than net book value was used, therefore overestimating the value of the equipment drawn from U.S. stocks. This overvaluation has not constrained our support to Ukraine, nor impacted our ability to flow capabilities to the battlefield. So this doesn't mean now that the U.S. will not send more. It means that the U.S. has already sent more. But who cares? It's not like the U.S. will audit itself. If they did, they would fail their own internal audit process. Now, remember, this sort of thing about like valuing assets is something that the New York State Attorney General is going after Donald Trump for. Like, you can't value assets one way for one person and then higher for your taxes or lower for an appraisal, right? Or the other way around, I think is what he did. But that's what the U.S. is doing on the battlefield. Now, this could have been prevented if Senator Rand Paul had his way. Remember, this was last May, 1 year ago from today. He asked Congress for an independent auditor, and they blew him off.
So I act to modify the bill to allow for a special inspector general. This would be the inspector general that's been overseeing the waste in Afghanistan and has done a great job.
So we wouldn't have this accounting error if we had this person, but we don't. So the U.S. is going to just keep sending weapons, and Russia will keep making kindling out of them like they did today. Today, Russia said their forces destroyed Ukrainian artillery guns in Kherson. This is another weapon stock that, on top of the weapon stock that they destroyed last week, this is a Soviet-era tank that had been in their coffers. I mean, it's not even new equipment. They're just going and destroying everything. And will the U.S. open their wallet for more? Well, yes, they will, because there's profit there. This week, Pentagon insiders are warning about price gouging And a former contractor at the Defense Department, Shay Assad, who is now retired after 40 years of service, went on 60 Minutes and said this. Now, I can't play you the clips because YouTube is very particular about copyright for 60 Minutes.
No, 60 Minutes is particular about it. If you play a 60 Minutes clip, they take your whole video down. So we cannot play a 60 Minutes clip here.
But to 60 Minutes credit, they actually said that they did a 6-month investigation and found so much price gouging by military weapons providers that it's astronomical. Look at just this summary, and then I'm going to show you a lot more. It says, in 1991, before defense contractors consolidated, shoulder-fired Stinger missiles cost $25,000. Now the sole supplier charges more than $400,000 apiece, making it costly to replace each missile in Ukraine. Now, I would argue then don't send anymore because they're just getting blown up, and maybe we could do peace talks instead. But the point here, never do they mention peace in this. Their point here is that it's inflation and then some. Go ahead, David.
Well, and they're caring to think about this money. They're like, oh, this is a big deal, but we're going to make it right. But they're not even saying anything about the fact that less than 30% even makes it where it's going. That doesn't matter.
Yeah. Now, this whistleblower, he says the gouging that takes place is unconscionable. No matter who they are, no matter what the company is, they need to be held accountable. And right now, that accountability system is broken inside the Department of Defense. Again, we did have a request for an audit by Rand Paul, and that was sort of laughed off as if, the headlines were, he's holding up aid to Ukraine. Now, the expert who spoke to 60 Minutes, though, he's saying, again, that this is the equivalent of not giving a Marine enough bullets to put in his clip because the price is inflated. They cannot actually pay for enough that they need. So this is a death sentence because you can only buy so many things at this high price. Here's this expert here. What he's showing, I know it's hard to see there, is what he calls an oil switch. It looks just like a cord, right? He says NASA used to buy these oil switches for $300. Now the U.S. government buys them at $10,000 each. $300, and now they send a bill for $10,000, and the United States doesn't push back and says, okay, sure. Here are a couple other examples that they gave. For instance, Lockheed and Boeing were found to be making almost a 40% profit when selling PAC-3 missiles to the U.S. government. Over a 7-year period, the companies made hundreds of billions of dollars on the deals. He says, based on what they actually made, we would have received an entire year's worth of missiles for free. And there's already a new contract negotiated for $550 million. Raytheon was also accused of making unacceptable profits from the Patriot air defense system by exaggerating the cost and time involved to build the radar equipment. A Raytheon spokesperson told 60 Minutes that they're working to equitably resolve the dispute. While the CEO informed investors in 2021 that the company planned to set aside $290 million for profitable liability. Now, not only that, they make the case, and this is amazing, that the military doesn't own the software that a lot of this machinery runs on. So when it needs an upgrade, we pay billions of dollars for that, or millions of dollars, whatever the case, because he said when that equipment was bought, the military didn't really think to say, well, when we need to upgrade it or when we need to own this data or what have you. They just didn't make any negotiations for the software. So they have to circle back around and wait for those programming upgrades, which is kind of amazing when you think about the fact that the United States pays millions, billions actually, for software bugs that either they can exploit or keep their enemies for exploiting. They're called 0 days. When a hacker finds a 0 day, they put it on the black market, and various defense departments buy it up. So the NSA could be buying a 0 day either to exploit it or to keep it off the market. And then also the CIA will buy the same 0 day. So the United States does buy software or software bugs. They just don't buy it for their weapons machinery. They just don't need it.
And I wonder if Microsoft makes any money off of that. I wonder.
Well, we already know that they do, right? We already know. First of all, we already know that they're making a lot of money supporting the infrastructure and in Ukraine. We already know that. We reported that here on the show.
Yeah.
And then when you contrast that with like what is Russia spending right now and where is that money going? There, of course, there's sort of Western media outlet spin about how much money is coming out of there.
Yeah.
The one number, though, that we can actually point to from the Russian Ministry of Defense, where they said they would spend, the Russian Ministry of Finance, reported that by the end of the year, by the end of this past year, 2022 into 2023, that they would increase their spending by about 31%. So that's about 57 billion US dollars to about 74 billion US dollars, that 30% increase, which is, think about that, the fraction of what the United States has spent. The United States alone has spent funneling into Ukraine.
Right. Well, when you think about it, the Pentagon budget is $842 billion, the biggest ever.
Although I saw reports that it's actually over $1 trillion now.
Well, right, because you did that great piece not too long ago when you looked at what was outside of the defense budget, which is just being contracted out. And you can see that every single day on, what was it, the Department of Defense website
Department of Defense website. Yeah.
And those things, those contracted jobs are usually not inside of the normal defense budget. Yeah. But if we're just kind of pretending that that number is real, $842 billion, fully half of it will go to defense contractors. And they do seem very much the Stark Industries archetype of just, like, let's make the weapons, make a ton of money and, inflate the price because the U.S. taxpayer will pay for it. Now, this person, this contractor who spoke to 60 Minutes, his last name is Assad, not to be confused with the president of Syria. He tried to get an investigation launched, but he was ignored. He said that, it wasn't always like that. And he worked in this department for 40 years. He says in the 80s, the government had a choice of where to buy weapons, and they got good deals because of competition in the marketplace. Well, now those negotiators had job cuts, and the government sort of acted in good. This is his derision. I find this extremely hard to buy. Let me know if you buy this in the chat. He says, well, the government just sort of thought we don't need those weapons price negotiators anymore. We think that the defense contractors are going to give us a good price because they always have. And so we trust them to act in good faith and set fair prices. And what do you know? They didn't. Now, the reason I don't buy that maybe is because we are post-pandemic and we have seen another time when governments have taken advantage of tragedies to award big contracts to private companies. Where have I seen this before?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Any hint? Any, right?
Yeah.
And then transfer massive wealth to the private sector.
Right. For people that are listening to the podcast version of this, the audio version, we have a podcast version of this. We're talking about, of course, biopharmaceuticals, right? So it's vaccines, the cost of vaccines.
Well, specifically this idea of leapfrogging on public fear of a tragedy.
Right.
And then awarding massive contracts to private companies.
Right.
Yes, we've seen that in the recent past during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, like, we would know this was like not a money scheme, because if it wasn't, they would make sure every damn weapon got there. We would be seeing videos like, are they just shooting these missiles and bullets willy-nilly into the sky because we have no propaganda coming from the Ukraine showing any Russian stuff destroyed? So it's like, where is it all going? So that should be proof that it's a money scheme, because that's all this is about. Otherwise, they would make sure that they were winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could they could point to our tanks are making a difference on the battlefield. This is
exactly.
They could say NATO forces helped Ukraine hold Bakhmut and then win in Bakhmut, right? And take over that town. Instead, the opposite is true. And there's no evidence. Where are the weapons? All the weapons that we see, of course, are in these warehouses that end up getting blown up when they arrive.
We see them up in smoke.
Yeah. Literally.
Yeah, like I would say the majority of the videos I see that come from there, like on Reddit, there's several subreddits like dedicated to the war in Ukraine, and it's mostly drones dropping grenades, and that's like 85% of all the videos you see are just drones dropping grenades.
Like some guy attaches a little grenade to a thing, and then they fly it out, and then they get the footage of it. Right, that's what they want. They want the video of them dropping it down into a foxhole or something like that.
Well, you sort of see. I don't know. It does feel very, again, like Jean Baudrillard, the postmodern theorist had said in his great book, The Gulf War Did Not Exist, is that a lot of war happens through propaganda. And you don't see people as much as you see images that are what they want you to see. This is the reality we have right now. So you see sort of like tanks stuck in the mud or people pushing and walking around, right? But yeah, there's a lot that we just don't get to see other than what is destroyed by, what is destroyed in terms of weaponry.
Right.
So let us know what you think in the chat. Is this just straight price gouging? A lot of people, they have to answer to regulators for price gouging. Why don't weapons makers?
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.